let's get to the news. No, we actually have some real news early on. Saquon Barkley agreed to a contract, a very strange deal. It seems like he basically took the same money, but he gets $1 million if he has a career year. He
gets $2 million earlier.
Yeah, he gets $2 million earlier, which, the time value of money, Chris, we talk about that all the time in our free time. So Saquon Barkley in Dynasty, this does actually, it removes the tiniest bit of risk. And I think somebody in the chat says here, go get Josh Jacobs if someone is offering. There's a very good chance Jacobs now signs for slightly more. That is kind of the way these things work. I really have a hard time believing any running backs were ever going to sit out games just because there's no money available for running backs ever. But
they're so disincentivized to do so. There's no winning there.
There's no winning. So I have Barkley right now as my RB7 in Dynasty. We'll play a little game of too high, too low, or just right. Here are the three running backs on either side. Just ahead of him, I have Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs. Just behind him, I have Travis Etienne, Austin Eckler, Ramondre Stevenson. Chris, is that just high, just right? Too high, too low for Saquon Barkley? I kind of feel like he should be third because we should just rank all running backs in Dynasty exactly the same way we do in redraft because this is the only year that matters.
Yeah, he's not. That's mostly true, I think. I think it's probably the next 3 years for most running backs. But obviously, when you're talking about Derrick Henry, this might actually be the only year he matters for fantasy again. Right. So you have to keep that in mind. But Barkley is 26, so I think that makes sense. Eckler's a year or two older than him. Jacobs is almost exactly a year younger than him. So I think that order makes perfect sense. Gibbs is the younger guy. Maybe I don't want to say. I feel like we kind of fall into the trap of just if someone's younger, they're the more high upside option. But I think it's incredibly unlikely Jahmyr Gibbs actually has a higher ceiling over the next 2 or 3 years than Saquon Barkley, given that Saquon Barkley's actual observed ceiling is a top 3 running back.
Right. Adam, I wanted to ask you about that. This bothers me a little bit with any running back when they're on the last, people talk about it, they want the running backs on those contract years because they're allegedly going to run harder or try harder or whatever. But for me, if Jahmyr Gibbs tears an ACL this year, he's going to be on a team next year. He's going to be on a team the year after that. If Saquon tears an ACL this year, he might be a backup for somebody next year and out of the league in 2 years.
Right, yeah. And I have Saquon at running back 6 right now. To me, this obviously impacts – it really takes away the risk of him sitting out games this year, obviously. But, I believe they can still just franchise tag him again next season, right? Yep. So, for Dynasty, obviously this year, yes, we're going to get Saquon Barkley playing for the Giants. But next year, it didn't really change much for me going forward because what if we're in the same situation this time next season again, and all of a sudden we're dealing with it? So, you said running back 7. I have him at 6. So
we're gonna go just right on that one. News item number 2: Javonte Williams surprisingly not on the pup. I'm taking this in a cautiously optimistic way. I think sometimes these teams use the pup differently, and it's possible that Javonte Williams doesn't start on the pup, but does the same thing Breece Hall's doing right now, which is running in a straight line at practice, and the two teams are just calling it something different. But are you feeling better about Javonte in the year coming off the ACL, which has been a problem for guys even if they don't miss time? And then how are you feeling about him long term? Because this is a guy who was in everybody's top 6 for sure in Dynasty a year ago. I've got him at RB17 right now.
Yeah, so for me, when I saw the news, obviously Javonte for Dynasty will continue to be ranked higher as he should, but I kind of wanted to just keep trying to trade for Samaje Perine in Dynasty leagues when I saw this because his value is I remember at a few leagues that I'm in, I tried to trade for him for some depth at the running back position, and some of the league mates were I don't want to, I have no interest, and now you might be able to trade for him, and if Javonte starts week 1, I don't envision him getting a ton of work. And we have to remember with Javonte, as good as a prospect as he was and is, and a player as he is, North Carolina, he split with Michael Carter. Mm-hmm. First 2 seasons, split with Melvin Gordon. And now you have Sean Payton, who's loved using multiple running backs. You look at the last couple seasons from 2016 to 2020 for Sean Payton. The number 2 running back averaged 173 touches per year. So, whether it was Kamara, Ingram, Pierre Thomas, Sproles, Reggie Bush, Chris Ivory, Tim Hightower. Like Samaje Perine is going to play and get touches whether Javonte Williams is 50% healthy or 100% healthy. So, yes, this is good news for Javonte for obviously being able to maybe even start week 1 and obviously for his dynasty future. But I still think this is also, to me, and maybe that's just kind of how my mind works, I view this as an opportunity to go out and try to trade for Samaje Perine because I envisioned him having a role this whole time, whether Javonte was fully healthy or not.
All right, Chris, we're third news item, of course, we have to spend a little bit more time on because it's about the Chiefs. No, because it's about the Chiefs wide receivers. And first off, obviously the news item is Kadarius Toney hurt his knee fielding a punt the first day of training camp. There have been some conflicting reports, but he's going to miss multiple weeks. They are hopeful he will be ready for the start of the season. It is possible he will not. It's possible he'll be ready for the start of the season and get hurt week 1. But we've gone through most of this summer with the buzz about Kadarius Toney is the Chiefs' number 1 wide receiver. And I thought that was a little bit much. I thought the gap between Toney and Sky Moore was too big. But I think it's interesting, like right now, and we saw the comment, I have removed Kadarius Toney from my board. I think some people feel like that. Right now, in a dynasty startup draft, you've got Kadarius Toney, you've got Sky Moore, you've got Rashee Rice. Everybody's talking about Richie James the last couple of days. I don't think that's actually going to be a thing. We saw last year, Mecole Hardman had a month-long stretch as a top 12 wide receiver. Juju had a 2-month-long stretch as a top 24 wide receiver. I don't think it's just as simple as Travis Kelce's the only pass catcher that's going to matter on this team. How are you viewing those 3 young wide receivers, Toney, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, and do you think anybody else is going to matter for Dynasty, Chris?
I think it's, like you said, it's unfair to say that Travis Kelce is the only one that matters. I think the problem is it just one guy that matters, or is it 3 different guys at 3 different times? That's the bigger concern for me. In redraft, I've had Toney and Moore ranked back-to-back the entire process. It's like 42 and 43. In NFC ADP, Sky Moore is going 50 picks behind Kadarius Toney before the injury, which is just ludicrous. There's no justification for it. I don't care that Toney has had like 7 good quarters in the NFL. I can't justify it. In Dynasty, I think you probably just throw Rashee Rice in that group and just have them ranked basically right next to each other. If you want to have them as low-end wide receiver 3s, because there's a ton of upside with Kelce at some point on the way out, and that team having to transition to other pass catchers. If you want to have them in the more like the wide receiver 4 range, I think that makes sense. But on the whole, I think it makes the most sense to have them ranked relatively close to one another. Similar draft capital across the board. Rashee Rice hasn't played in the NFL. Nonetheless, similar amount of success at the NFL level between Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice. So I just think you throw them all out there. Whichever one's cheapest, that's the one I want to buy.
Adam, I'm telling you right now that the wide receiver 1 for the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs is on the roster. Who is it and why?
It's Jerick McKinnon. I'm like half joking. Like, again, okay, so Jerick McKinnon last year was like 4th in the NFL.
I'm sorry, the regular season. Not the playoffs.
That's a good point. But no, like, I've struggled to give up on Kadarius Toney, mainly because, well, A, I liked him as a prospect, and then B, his skill set is so perfect for Andy Reid's offense. It's just obviously the health. I still want to say Toney. I really do. But like you could have asked, I could have answered that earlier question, Heath, about the player to trade for before the season starts. That could have been Sky Moore, because I feel like he might be like one of the highest rising players in ADP.
Yep.
Especially because we know Toney won't practice for a few weeks. We think he plays week 1, but even then, he probably misses most of training camp. And then at that case, Sky Moore is running, because the Chiefs are mainly a 2-wide set, right? They run a lot of 12 personnel. Kelce doesn't lead the field, obviously, but they don't run a lot of 3-wide sets. So MVS will always be on the field. He'll play the outside. And then it was really becoming, okay, will Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, or Toney be on the field? I thought Toney was the lead for that spot. But now Sky Moore could be playing in 2-wide sets. Obviously, when they go 3-wide, you think he'd be on the field too. I'm still going to lean Toney, but it's probably foolish. I just think he's still, I don't know, those 5 games he might play this year could be like really, really good. But like Sky Moore, I think it was yesterday, he said he's like way ahead of where he was last year. So that's obviously A, not surprising going into a second year, and B, great to hear. But I'll still lean Toney for now.
Not just his second year in the NFL, but his fourth year playing wide receiver ever.
Right,
like
and his first full season,
college,
and his first offseason, like actually going into camp as a wide receiver and not playing, mostly on punt return.
And like the first time he's playing the same position with the same offense that he finished the previous season in. Because remember, Giants had a different coaching staff last year, obviously his rookie season. So like the thing that in theory I like about Kadarius Toney is the ability to line him up all over the field, use him in the running game. Like that is really exciting in an offense like this that does take advantage of unique skill sets. It's just, you got to be on the field. And he's shown, I tend to be pretty injury agnostic, but like he's shown no ability. He had knee surgery this offseason. The first practice of training camp, he aggravates the knee that he had surgery on. It's so tough.
Speaking of injury concerns, I've got one more name to throw at you, Adam, and I'll just admit I'm a sucker for guys who are like super elite at 18 or 19 years old, even if things go wrong after that. And the guy who was getting first team reps in practice yesterday was Justin Ross. Who has been working with Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes has been talking about him. So.
Mahomes has been talking about him. This guy was that dude as a teenager and then just couldn't stay healthy. Yeah. Is there any chance he's the answer? And shouldn't Dynasty
Who do you think plays more games, him or Toney this year?
I would just say at the very least, and I know a lot of you guys already know this, we've talked about it on the podcast before, if you're in a 14-team league, he's certainly rostered. A 12-team, he might be. But if you're in a 12-team league, a Dynasty league, you should go check your waiver wire this morning just to see if Justin Ross. I
actually did like last week. He was not available, but he 1000% has to be. You have to make sure he's not out there.
And then Chris, last news item, because I actually had missed this, but apparently Jameson Williams is hurt again as well. Suffered a leg injury. He's already not going to be able to play with the team for the first 6 weeks. If somebody offered you, like they're the best team in the league, so you're convinced it's going to be the 12th pick next year, but you can still get a first-round rookie pick for Jameson Williams. Are you taking it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've got him. It's a dynasty / salary cap league. I've got him for $5 out of 120 budget this year, and like, I'm probably going to keep him.
Yeah,
but
I'm scared.
That's mostly just because I have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase for like $23 total. So it's like I got a little money to play around with, so might as well. But like, I'm gonna try to shop him, and see if I can get anything before I have to make that decision on whether I'm gonna keep him for $5. Because it's just one catch as a rookie, not gonna play until week 7 this year. You're not gonna be able to start him at the earliest until week 8. You got to see something. And so that's an awful long time to get absolutely nothing out of a player.
I think if you can get a first for him, you should go get a first for him. I think it's the safer move. That first is at least going to go up in value over the next year. We don't know what's going to happen to Jameson Williams.